Water for washing, water for bathing, water for drinking. Water is the source of life and health. Yet while some people use hundreds of gallons in one day, others suffer to find the few liters they need to survive. In Liberia, West Africa, where rainforest conditions exist, scarcity of water is not such a concern as quality of water. The villages have at least one nearby stream which flows year-round, but what they will find there is another story entirely. The streams are a common source of schistosomiasis, hepatitis, dysentery, cholera, typhoid, and other life-threatening diseases. And the measures the women and children must endure to carry the water home only serves to weaken them further. It is no wonder that half of the children born in the more remote villages of Liberia die before their 5th birthday. Wellspring Africa was founded to address this basic human need, and to do so in such a way that rural villagers might learn the water development skills we sometimes take for granted here in the U.S. This is the story of our Liberian well drilling project.
Liberia is a country about the size of Washington State on the west coast of Africa. Its capital city, Monrovia, is home to about a quarter of the country's 2 million population, while the rest live up country, or as the Liberians would say, in the bush. Most of the people who live outside the capital are traditional farmers, and the average family income is barely $200 a year. Very few can read or write, and they work hard to survive. But they have developed the skills to build almost all of their needs out of the surrounding forest. Still, their life can be difficult. Scarcity of food is a common problem, and very few of the villagers have access to health services. Less than 20% of the Liberians drink from a clean water source, and few understand the link between the water they drink and the high rate of illness and death. Wellspring Africa was invited to Liberia by some concerned village chiefs and a local Liberian church to help the villagers find a way to drill for water.
The Wellspring Africa project was funded and sponsored by several civic and religious groups in the Olympia, Washington area, 200 individuals, and nearly 500 school children who raised money to buy pumps. Other funds were raised through an auction, garage sale, a car wash, even by carrying water in the annual crop walk. We also received a grant from the Dorothea Haas Ross Foundation, a New York organization which seeks to improve the well-being of children everywhere. Part of the challenge of our project was to find the well drilling methods which would be most adaptable to the villagers' resources and skills. Several students at the Evergreen State College pitched in to do research into the history of well drilling and came up with designs dating back to 1100 BC. We were able to put together a hand-powered drilling apparatus for less than $400 and actually used it to drill a hole on a local farm.
We flew into Liberia on January 16, 1986, to one of our first and most devastating disappointments. The Christ Pentecostal Church had not prepared for the project as they had pledged. Not only that, but they had sent us falsified reports on what the government was going to provide. Now, we had been expecting some difficulties because we understand that is the nature of international development, but we were not expecting things to fall apart so quickly. Nevertheless, we managed to find replacements for everything that was missing by approaching organizations like UNICEF, offices of the Liberian government, and the American Embassy. We were cheered to find so much interest and willing support for our very small but appropriate project.
Another difficult dynamic that we had to work with was the political situation. Liberia's economy is rapidly deteriorating after 5 years of being plundered by the current government. 2 weeks after some elections last October, which international observers deemed to be rigged, there was a coup attempt which failed. It was retaliated to with a ferocious bloodbath. Hundreds of Liberians were killed and thousands forced to flee the country. When we arrived in Monrovia, government employees had been without pay for over 6 months. Many public services, including hospitals and schools, were closed down, and there were rumors of another coup attempt wherever we went.
But we made it through all the obstacles and finally loaded our gear atop our government-assigned dump truck and headed off into the bush. It took us 5 days to drive, very slowly, the 250 miles to the end of the rutted, dusty road. We had to stop at every one of the log bridges to judge its safety. Our driver, Aaron, who admitted he was a born chicken, needed to be coaxed over every bridge. Then we hit the last bridge on the road. It had one log that was so rotten that when we struck it with a hammer, the hammer got stuck. Aaron put his foot down and we spent the night in a village on the side of the road. A couple of days later, a lighter truck came by. After some quick negotiations, they loaded all of our stuff and took us the last 10 miles to Warpo, the end of the road.
Our reception in the villages was every bit as dazzling as our reception in Monrovia was dismal. We were met in Warpo by over 40 men from the villages of Bola where we would be working. Even the chiefs had come out of the bush to greet us and to help carry the tools and supplies back into the villages. They quickly divided up the goods into individual headloads, some as heavy as 100 pounds, and we started our 5-hour trek into the bush. These narrow trails are the village's only connection to the outside world and markets. The small streams are crossed by these stick and bamboo footbridges, the large rivers by raft. When we arrived in the village of Bola Newtown, we were greeted in the traditional fashion by first being offered a kola nut, a caffeine-rich nut that tastes like aspirin, which we dipped in crushed red pepper and ate to refresh ourselves after such a long hike. Then we were presented with a chicken and a basket of rice, a welcome gift from the village. We were assigned to spend our first month living in the home of Gabriel and Lucy Tia, who proved to be the nicest hosts we could have asked for.
It was now the middle of the dry season, and all of Bola was involved in cutting and planting their farms. Every year, each family decides on a plot of land which hasn't been farmed for at least 12 years and sacrifices a white chicken and a bottle of sugarcane gin at the base of the sacred cottonwood tree to please the ancestors. Then the men begin to brush the farm. Using only machetes and an occasional axe, the men and boys cut all but the sacred trees and then strip the branches off so they dry faster in the baking sun. When the cuttings are dry enough, they set them afire and the residual ash provides fertilizer to the soil. The felled trunks are left in place to keep the soil from eroding away during the summer's heavy rains. Then the women start planting. With a small hand hoe and seed rice from last year's crop, they plant and chant songs amidst the dry dust and ash. Meanwhile, the men build strong fences around the farm to keep bush animals and the village cows from eating the seedlings. This is the busiest time of the villagers' year, and everyone is called into service. Even the youngest child is put to the critical task of scaring the birds away from the struggling crop that represents his family's store for the year.
We started our work by first holding meetings with the chiefs and elders from the surrounding area to clarify our plans and goals. They took us to the stream to show us why they wanted wells in their villages. We were given a vacant schoolhouse in Bola Newtown in which to conduct our courses, and we announced that classes would begin the following Monday. The first day of class was truly exciting. While we had asked the chiefs and elders to allow many to come to the course, we knew that the villagers were in the middle of their farming season, and that getting the men and women to take time to attend our classes would be difficult. But much to our surprise, the first day we met, we found 22 persons eagerly awaiting instruction, and 8 of them were women.
We spent 2 weeks covering such topics as the Earth's water cycles, why the water in the ground is clean, why the water in the streams is not clean, how people get sick from water, and how to drill a well. Because many of the students were illiterate, we gave lively lectures which were translated into Kru. We also tried some simple experiments to illustrate our talks. In one, we put drops of river water on slides and put them underneath the microscope. We found cyclops, various worms, and lots of garbage which couldn't be identified, but at 400 times its original size did not look very appetizing. The word spread fast as new ideas about water were broadcast from village to village.
The students, using their new knowledge of geology, hunted around for the best site. They came up with this spot, and we assembled all the tools together. First, we put up a tripod of poles cut from the forest, and then we hung a pulley from the center. We started digging the hole by hand and then switched to the drill tools. The drill involved a heavy bit which we would put into the hole to chop up the earth. Several men would pull on the rope to raise and drop the bit, while one man guided the bit and poured water into the hole to make mud out of the chopped earth. Then we would pull out the bit and put in a baler. The baler acted like a bucket which would pick up the mud at the bottom of the hole so we could, literally, bale it out. As you can see, the drilling took a lot of people and energy. This is ideal for this sort of development because it gets so many people involved and interested in making the well. It necessitates that the villagers learn to drill the well instead of having outsiders come in, do the work, and leave without any transfer of knowledge. Everybody in the village got involved. Some women and children hauled water for the drilling. Some children sorted sands and gravel for the well and the concrete. Some women went to the stream to find clay to seal up the well, while all the men took turns at pulling the rope.
Every morning for 2 weeks, the women met to practice on the pumps. Though hampered by a language barrier, and having never used such hand tools before, they caught on quickly and were soon brushing away the male offers of help by asserting, "This is woman's business."
But the men were running into trouble. They drilled 3 holes, but each time went clear down to the bedrock without finding water. Unfortunately, Bula Newtown is built on top of an outcrop of bedrock, which geologists say is some of the Earth's oldest rock at 12 billion years. "The rock makes us weak," complained the men, even though they were ready to drill again. The trainees were, however, quite proud of the holes they had drilled and refused to let them be filled in again.
After 2 weeks of class and 2 weeks of practical work, it was time for a graduation. Of the 22 people that started our course, 21 saw it through to the end. The students arranged a country cook, their version of a potluck supper, and we handed out their certificates before the entire village. The graduates, who have had so few educational opportunities, cherished their certificates and were elated to have learned such valuable skills. It showed in their smiles and thank you speeches. They asked us to pass on their gratefulness to the folks back home.
Then we ran into another problem. Our visas were expiring, and although the CPC church officials had assured us they would get our visas, none were forthcoming. Because of the political situation, we did not dare to be without them. So we had to put the well drilling on hold and return to the capital to secure the visas ourselves. Now, getting back to Monrovia this time meant hiking 5 hours to the main road and waiting for a car. Usually at least one passed every day. Then we rode with sometimes as many as 36 others crammed into a Toyota pickup truck to Sasstown. Then we go to the Sasstown International Airport and wait to hear the drone of a passing airplane. At this point, one grabs a white cloth and dashes onto the airstrip and waves frantically. If the pilot spots the flag and has one of his 4 seats empty, he'll land. This process can take days.
When we got to the capital, we ran into further troubles. It turned out that the man from the church who had accompanied us to the villages to be our guide and interpreter was only assigned to be with us for a couple of weeks instead of the 3 months we had been promised. The CPC church did eventually provide us visas after 2 weeks of hassling, but they were exit visas. They gave us 7 days to depart from the country. By now we were beginning to get the message. Leave the country, but leave your things with us. But we, not willing to give up so easily and excited about how well things had gone in the villages, responded by saying that if the CPC church wasn't willing to work with us, we will find another sponsor and carry on the effort. Well, the CPC officials engaged us in a lot of haggling about the ownership of the tools and equipment we had brought, even trying to lay claim to Wellspring Africa funds. They tried several tricks to scare us out of the country, but we were determined to see that at least one well was finished in Bola so that the villagers had the experience and knowledge to put in others on their own.
One thing that made the Palava so bearable was the support and encouragement of 2 American USAID workers who invited us into their home. They helped keep us sane by forcing us to accompany them to a deserted lagoon and learn windsurfing every Sunday afternoon we were in Monrovia. We met many Americans doing development work there, all who assured us that what was happening to our project was certainly nothing new and was actually par for the course. If the country didn't have these problems, it wouldn't need development now, would it? One 70-year-old missionary friend reminded us.
After 7 long weeks of negotiating with the CPC Church, with the rainy season coming on, and our new visas only lasting a few more weeks, we finally decided that there was only one way for us to continue the work. Against everybody else's better judgment, we packed up our bags and flew back to Sasstown by ourselves. It was a difficult decision to go back into the bush without a guide. Not knowing what the villagers had been told about our mysterious disappearance, we sent a note by messenger into the bush to see if the villagers still wanted to do the drilling. The cryptic reply from Chief D.S. Toe was, "Our eyes are to the road," meaning he was waiting to see us. When we got to the trailhead, we found it thigh-deep with the swirling, brackish water of the year's first rains. We had a 5-hour hike ahead and a dubious reception awaiting us.
We needed chocolate. The folks in Bola were surprised and delighted to see us back. They said, "That church always caused too much trouble," and explained that a couple of the church officials had been to the village while we were gone to tell them that we had left the country and to take some of our personal things. Luckily, the drilling tools were still there, and the villagers were excited to continue the work. This time they selected a site that we thought was ideal, and sure enough, they hit water on the first day of drilling. The next day, we put in the plastic casing, packed the bottom with sorted sands, sealed the top with fine clays so surface water couldn't leak in to spoil the well, and then we capped the well off with a concrete platform. A few days later, we used high pressure to flush out the smaller sands and dirt at the bottom of the well, and then installed the pump. We added a little chlorine to sanitize the well and let it sit overnight.
The villagers were thrilled with their new well, some because they had built it themselves, some because they understood the health benefits, and many just because it made their village kui, or civilized. With the rainy season at full bore, we were unable to do any more drilling. We left the villagers with pumps, spare parts, and tools to drill and install more wells during the next dry season. We were delighted with the skill and dexterity of the trainees and how quickly they adapted this new drilling technique. It was quite literally true that after we showed them how to drill the first hole, they took over and drilled the following holes themselves. They were proud of their new skills, and we have every confidence that they can continue to drill wells by themselves. Their only limitation will be their initiative.
While waiting for a plane in Sasstown, we pitched in to fix a couple of broken water systems. Then, when we got back to the capital, we found a request from the director of an up-country leprosy center and hospital to help them with some very urgent water problems. It seems that they had some old hand pumps which were broken down, and some new hand pumps which they could not figure out to install. With a lack of pumps, the residents had returned to the streams for their water. They got us visa extensions, so we packed up and moved to the Ganta Leprosy Rehabilitation Center and Methodist Hospital for a few weeks.
We were glad for the opportunity to help because pump repair has become the central issue in well programs around Africa. In some areas, more than 70% of newly installed pumps are not working within a year, oftentimes for the lack of some simple repair that the villagers could do themselves if they knew how. We worked with the center's mechanic to instruct him in the installation and repair of pumps, while we repaired 5 old hand pumps and installed 3 new pumps into already existing wells. Wellspring Africa supplied the center with a stock of spare parts to last them several years, and when we finally left, their 8 wells were working and we were sure the mechanic would have no problem keeping them that way. It was time for us to leave Liberia. As we reflect on the Liberian people and their lives, which are so different from our own, we deeply appreciate the opportunity we have had to share this experience with them. We are very thankful to the people of Bola for enriching our lives by inviting us to join them in this development effort. For the many supporters of Wellspring Africa, we hold a special admiration. Your part in choosing to learn about and become concerned for other folks 8,000 miles away, and then in reaching out to lend a hand by getting involved in the earnest but elusive business of development, has made a difference in the lives of everyone involved. Yes, a well was created in Bola, and many Bola villagers received training that set them aglow with new ideas, new things to think about, and new skills to be proud of. And yes, the 8 wells in Ganta are in working order, and they have a trained mechanic to keep them that way. But more importantly, there has been another personal contact between cultures learning to live together in an attitude of sharing and caring. It is not easy to measure the effects of such a development project, but the real value lies in the effort made and the love shared.